Have you ever thought of a novel as, well, an act of rebellion? Not just a story, but a direct, powerful challenge to an entire empire. That's exactly what we're diving into today, with Chinua Achebe's incredible novel, Things Fall Apart. Let's really unpack how one single book can literally rewrite history. Okay, first things first, we need to get our heads around this key idea, post-colonial counter-discourse. Now, I know it sounds super academic, but the concept is actually pretty simple and really powerful. For centuries, colonial powers were the ones telling the story, right? They wrote the history books. Well, counter-discourse is when the people who were colonized grab the pen and write their own story, correcting the record and basically talking back to the empire. So how exactly does Achebe's novel pull this off? Well, we're going to break it down. We'll look at how he corrects the colonial version of history and, crucially, gives a voice to Africans. Then we'll explore the brilliant way he takes the English language and completely makes it his own, and how he shows the true, devastating cost of colonialism. And finally, we'll see why the novel, at its heart, is a fight for culture itself. All right, let's jump right into the first and most direct challenge, correcting that distorted colonial record. So what's so powerful here is how this slide just lays out the whole battleground. For so long, colonial literature painted Africa with this single, lazy brushstroke, primitive, chaotic, cultureless. But Achebe, he doesn't just fire back with an angry argument. No, he responds with a rich, detailed, living portrait. He shows us the Igbo society's complex legal system, its structured economy built around yams, and this incredibly vibrant cultural life just buzzing with festivals and rituals and a deep, complex religion. You see, this is more than just telling a story. It's a careful, point-by-point takedown of imperial prejudice. Next up, and this is so important, we're looking at how an African voice finally gets to speak for itself. Before Things Fall Apart, African characters in European books were often just props. They were objects described from the outside, almost like scenery. What Achebe does is he completely flips the camera around. For pretty much the first time, readers are now inside the mind of a character like Okonkwo. We get to feel his ambitions, his fears, his beliefs, all from his point of view. Through these characters, Achebe makes it so that Africans are no longer just the silent subjects of somebody else's story. Now they are the narrators of their own. Okay, this brings us to one of the most brilliant and subtle strategies in the whole book. What Achebe does with the English language itself. And this quote just captures his approach perfectly. In Igbo culture, proverbs aren't just cute little sayings. They're essential. They're what makes conversation rich and meaningful, kind of like how palm oil makes food delicious and easy to swallow. Achebe felt that the English language needed that palm oil to really, truly carry the weight of his culture. And how does he do it? He weaves Igbo proverbs, local idioms, and the rhythms of oral storytelling right into the English text. So he's not just writing in English, he's remaking it. He's Africanizing it. He literally takes the colonizer's language and forces it to tell an African story on African terms. It's just a masterclass in taking something and turning it into a tool of power. But writing back isn't only about celebrating a culture, it's also about showing in no uncertain terms the damage that was done. Achebe shows us this chain reaction of destruction, step by step. The arrival of the missionaries and the colonial government, it doesn't unite people, it divides them. It pits neighbor against neighbor, it erodes ancient traditions, and it just systematically pulls apart the social fabric that held the community together for generations. That whole civilizing mission idea is exposed for what it really was, a mission of cultural dismantling. And Achebe captures all of this devastation in the fate of one single person, Okonkwo. His personal tragedy, his tragic fall, it's not just the story of a flawed hero, no. His fall becomes this massive, powerful metaphor for the collapse of an entire way of life, buckling under the immense pressure of imperialism. And all of this builds to our final and maybe the most important point, how the novel itself becomes an incredible act of cultural resistance. Think about it. The very act of writing Things Fall Apart is the fight. Just by carefully documenting and celebrating Igbo traditions, their beliefs, their worldview, he preserves them for everyone, for future generations. He creates a cultural record that stands in total defiance of the colonial story, powerfully asserting Africa's right to define its own identity and its own history. So, if you had to boil it all down to one single killer sentence, the ultimate takeaway, it's this.
things fall apart, writes back to the empire by correcting colonial misrepresentation of Africa, reclaiming indigenous voice and culture, appropriating English for African expression, and exposing the destructive impact of imperialism. It is a complete revolutionary act of counter-discourse.
And that really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? This whole act of writing back didn't just stop with Achebe. So, what modern stories, I'm talking books, movies, music, anything, what do you see out there today that's challenging a dominant narrative, that's giving a voice to people who've been silenced? It's happening all around us.